It was World Chenin Blanc Day on Saturday. World Chenin Blanc. Hooray! What does that mean to most of you? Probably not much. Chenin Blanc, I think, is one of the great varieties. And this is a really exciting topic. Not only is this an exciting topic, but before I go any further, I'll just tell you about Chenin Blanc very, very quickly. Chenin Blanc originates in France, came from the Loire Valley in France. In fact, a lot of the very finest dry whites, most minerally complex and age-worthy, because it ages effortlessly, wines in the world are made from Chenin Blanc. Anjou, Vouvray, Savagnières, Janières. These wines are all made from Chenin Blanc, and Chenin Blanc is one of the great grape varieties in the world. If you get a straw poll of experts and ask them, okay, what's the best grape variety in the world? Most of them will say either Chardonnay or Riesling. Most of them. Some of them will say Chenin. Chenin is definitely the third one on the list in the world. What they all have in common, Chardonnay, Riesling, Chenin, is they all express where they come from very, very well. So even though somebody might make one, if you make it, the chances are it's going to taste different. Also, they all age effortlessly. Even really cheap Chenin Blanc from a supermarket, which costs $4.99, you can probably still find some at that price. If you keep it for a year and a half, it'll still be drinkable. And in some cases, a freak happens and they turn to something rather wonderful. But Chenin Blanc is really either made for fresh, early drinking, or it's aged for 10, 15 years and it tastes quite extraordinary. Unlike Riesling, it's no stranger to the barrel. It likes some oak. And the South Africans have really learned this. South Africa lays claim at least to having half of the responsibility on Chenin Blanc in the world. And they are every bit as entitled to saying Chenin Blanc is a great variety from South Africa as the French are saying it's a great variety from France. They've been growing it there for years. How many years? 300 years, maybe? Certainly since the 1620s or something. A long, long, long time. So, what are we doing? Well, I had so many samples sent to me. Somebody very, very well organised, somebody who represents the wines of Chenin Blanc in South Africa, has arranged for lots of importers, lots of merchants, both very big, like Matthew Clark and Distel, down to very small. Shout out to Nick Darlington, Red Squirrel, the guys at Museum Wines and Southern Wines, North-South Wines. People all over the country have been sending me bottles of some of the very, very best white wine you can buy at the price, if I'm honest. There are so many of them, including blends. I think we're looking at something like 30 wines, that it seemed facile just to have a programme where I only did 3. So what I'm doing is 2 shows where I'm showing 5 or 6. And I think that's fair because there's so much that we can talk about around this subject. And also, the wines are yummy. They're really nice. Okay, starting off, we've got wines here which were kind of at the entry level, but still very well made. There are even wines which I consumed. I think there's bottles lying around here. This bottle is probably a bottle that everyone recognises. It's on the shelf of virtually every Londis in the country, and various others. KWV is an extraordinary business. That's a £9 wine in the dodgy shop at the corner at 1 a.m, and just everything they make is solid. And some of the very best stuff is world class. We'll come on to others in a minute. But the other thing about Chenin Blanc, as I mentioned, it explains where it's from very well. It draws from the local subtle differences in the soil, in the climate, and everything else. So it's a very, very nice one to explain South Africa with. What I've got here is a range of wines that looks a bit kind of wacky and a bit cool, but actually these are all very specifically chosen. This wine is from Robertson, a place which is very well known for making good Chardonnay, good sparkling wine grapes, very cool, quite wet by comparison to other areas of South Africa, and a bit of a bastard to get to, and largely not particularly pretty to look at, but amazing wines. This one's from the Swartland, which is the new sort of throne of excitement in South Africa, which is a very large area around a place called Malmesbury on the way north towards Namibia, and makes the most extraordinary wines. But also, people have found all sorts of old bush vines, old gnarly 150-year-old vines. I mean, even 30-year-old, let's be honest, is quite old for a New World country, let alone South Africa. And these wines are made from old vines, and they're quite delicious. This one is from Stellenbosch, which is a famous region in South Africa. But when you look on a map, pretty tiny compared to the wine region as a whole. If you look at the winelands of South Africa, it's really surprising how small Stellenbosch really is by comparison to everything else. But it has great terroir, and Stellenbosch in its own right can be very easily split into its north and south, and even then into separate valleys. An extraordinary story. If you like your wine and you're a real nerd, you've just got to go to South Africa. Get on a plane. That's the most expensive part. You have the most amazing hospitality, amazing service. So once they're past this lockdown, obviously you may have read a lot about the problems they've been having with tobacco sales and drink sales. It'll be over soon, and hopefully we can support them in their tourism as well. Okay, so this one, we've said Robertson, we've said Swartland, we've said Stellenbosch. This one, which is the Holden Manse wine, comes from Franschhoek, which is another very small region around the top of Stellenbosch, which was largely colonised by the French, who got chucked out for dissident religious reasons in the mid-1600s. Then we've got Durbanville, which sounds like it's from Durban, which is no good. If you look at the South African shows I've shown in the past, I think I did one on Sauvignon Blanc. Durbanville is now known as Cape Town DO because it's the closest. It's 25 minutes drive from the airport. Fantastic. And you're in the most amazing guest houses, drinking the most delicious wines. Not just white wines, but their Bordeaux blends, their pinotages are exquisite as well. And we're finishing off with a wine from a warmer region, just east of Paarl, it's in between Stellenbosch and the airport and Cape Town, and Malmesbury and Swartland. So it's between here and here, and you end up in Paarl. Paarl, in many ways, the oldest winemaking district of South Africa, called Paarl because two gigantic granite rocks stuck onto the side of the mountain. It's a lovely, beautiful valley, and up on the valley side there are two gigantic pebbles of granite, some mountainsides which look like two balls just been dropped in the ground, and Paarl is named after them because they look like pearls, and Paarl is Afrikaans for pearl. So, starting again: Robertson, Swartland, Stellenbosch, Franschhoek, Durbanville / Cape Town, and Paarl. Okay, just to shout out some other wines which were just so delicious over the weekend. I finished them, so I'm not going to taste them with you now, but you need to know about them. This one is particularly lovely because I actually went in Paarl on I think it's the longest high street in the world, and they have a little shop there. And the wife is an artist, the gentleman's an artist too, but also he very strongly supports all of the wildlife. He supports the protection of the African dogs, the wild dogs. And this is the most delicious wine, and it's called Painted Wolf, Old Vine 2017. I will put in the underneath the description chat where you can buy it because I think it's rather special. It's not super cheap, but it's amazing for what it is, which is $16.95. Old Vine, beautiful, only 4,000 bottles are ever made, but delicious. I wanted to shout out to him because he's so caring of the local wildlife and does a lot for it. Okay, and as you look at the end, this one, it's called KWV Mentors. Shout out to Isel van Berk, who is the most amazing winemaker. She's a little girl. She must come up to my shoulder, not even. Super, super, super brilliant winemaker. And she's making the best single range of wines that I know of anywhere. Just everything she touches is gold. And at one end, they got this cheap stuff. And at the other end, you're probably looking at about £20. But you pay for it, and it's worth it. Okay, so let's quickly taste through these wines. And then I'll let you guys digest all of this, and we'll have a few chats on the way. And then it's time for South Africa Chenin Blanc Part 2, which will probably come up in a couple of days' time. So, first of all, this is called William Robertson. Very fetching label, I think, 2019. Vintages, 2019 was a very nice, beautiful, I think, in fact, white wine vintage. Very, very good for Chenin and Chardonnay, I think, and Sauvignons were delicious. 2018 was a mixed bag. 2018 was super, 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 super hot. Super, super, super dry. Some things just don't handle that very well. But Chenin, brilliant. Chenin actually made some very, very nice wines in 2018. But they're dense, concentrated, quite meaty, and might need some time just to get over themselves and be a bit less angry. And to sort of, so they're not muscular and hard, but have grace, which always comes with time. This wine, I believe it's a wine that retails for about £8.50. I don't think it's sold much in retail, not in multiple retail, but it's also a bit of a darling amongst the restaurants in London. Just a shout out, Brett Graham. Sorry to hear that Ledbury is no more. One of the greatest meals I ever ate in my life was at Ledbury in Notting Hill. Ledbury restaurant, 2 Michelin stars. They finally had to close their doors a couple of weeks ago. This was one of their house wines. I used to be able to drink this by the glass in the Ledbury. It's one of the only ways you can go in there without basically having to sell your house. That's been open 3 days, and it's just delicious. What does they taste of? New World Chenin. There's a herbiness to them. Hint of herbaceousness. There's a taste of melon. There's a taste of honeysuckle. There's a honeyed note sometimes in the wine because the hang time is long. So they got this really what I like to call vendange tardive or late harvest flavours. Very, very good wine for not much money. So similar money. Vinologist. I think this came from Carte Blanche Wines. This is available in Majestic. Again, if you're buying lots of this is cheap as chips, and it's coming from the coolest and probably most sought-after region in South Africa at the moment, which I mentioned is Swartland. Very cool label. It's called the Vinologist. I think a bunch of guys that are putting together a nice range of simple, honest wines that really do what they're supposed to. And as I said, sold in Majestic. Oh, there we go. I think if you buy 6, you get it for... I don't want to say this out of turn. I think it's about £8, $7.99. Okay, so... When you drive through Swartland, which is a hell of a drive, to be honest, from Cape Town. But when you get there and you start driving through Rivière Castile and up to the side of it, up the mountain, by the mountains, Babylon's Kloof, there's this overriding smell because it's quite humid. You're inland, super hot in the day, very cold at night, but the ground retains water very well. It's a clay, pink terra rossa type clay, sticks in all the wheels. It's murder to harvest in your boots. You just end up looking like Elton John in Crocodile Rock with heels like that. It's just mud stuck to your boots. But it has this smell which is so South African. It's kind of muddy but clean. Smells earthy, like old amphoras, like old clay jars, like terracotta in the rain. But above that, there's this haunting freshness. It smells of a little bit of dried thyme or something. Just a hint of really pleasant herb action going on. But then there's this like lime jelly, apple fruit. Very satisfying. These couldn't be more different. The same price, South African Chenin Blanc, which is why I'm doing this show for you folks, because you need to know there are differences and huge regional differences, beautifully expressed by the wines I'm showing you here. Morgenhof, very famous old state, right back, slap bang in the middle of really like old school, important Stellenbosch. Okay, right in the important part, just in this like slight northern bit, next to great estates like Warwick Estate and so forth. This is 2018, brought in by Louis de Latour agencies. They don't sell much crap, to be honest. Most of their wine's very, very good, but for a price. Very, very, very good agency. 2018. I think this wine retails for, I think anywhere between £10 and £15. Depends where you buy it. But don't think that it's overpriced if it's £11 because it's worth way more than $9.99 in my opinion. It has some bottle age on here now. It's 2018. It has a lovely smell. It's grown uply made. This wine has seen some oak barrels, and the smell of the oak is beautiful. It's almost like the nicest, purest smell of vanilla ice cream. Over the top. Oh, so yeah, lovely. Or like a bean ice cream, but it has this wonderful vanilla-ness to it. Ripe, some lovely lemon curd edges to it. As I said, that was a smoking hot vintage. Delicious. God, these wines have been open 2 or 3 days. Most wines would just fall over at this price. If anything, these wines taste better when I pull them out. So, Holden Manse, this is a new one to me. This is brought in by Museum Wines. This wine's a bit more premium, a bit pricier. 2019, brand new vintage. I don't think anyone's selling it just yet, but I'll give you a list of who was selling the 18, and they'll probably go on. I think Hennings in Kent is selling it, so you can buy it online. But you're looking at about 20 quid here. Much paler in colour. So, I think it's time that I showed you a very confusing map. So, here we are. This is the map of the winelands of South Africa. Okay, let's see what I can do here. So it's very hard. Well, there we go. So, the big orange bit, that's Swartland, that's Malmesbury. You're going up towards Namibia. There's a place called Citrusdal north of that. Shout out to Cedarburg, another exquisite Chenin Blanc producer, really is. The real action, all the old sort of crazy action, Franschhoek and Stellenbosch, is all this little nubbity nub down here. And Stellenbosch is like a nugget, and Franschhoek is like an L shape around the outside. Hence the name French Hook, Franschhoek, because it's a valley that turns around and then it kind of stops. It gets steeper and steeper and steeper. Some of the very finest wines in South Africa come from there, but it's very small. And it's full of wonderful history. It's full of art galleries, beautiful restaurants, incredible hotels, non-stop. I mean, if you ever go to South Africa and you want to spend a day out of Somerset West, the main region of Cape Town, strongly recommend that you spend a day in Franschhoek. It's a really lovely day out. So, what do you think of the wine? Well, it's funny because of all the wines I've tasted so far, this tastes the most French. The influence of winemaking there is very French, although I imagine that's all changed since. I mean, there's so much cross-pollination. But it's quite a lot of rain in that corner. It deposits a lot of rain. The big pass that goes around the back of Franschhoek takes you all the way down to Walker Bay, which is down here. It's sort of like between the sort of like the little orange point there and the green bit down there. It gets colder and colder the further south you go. They've got winds. This is Cape. This is where all the crazy oceans are, and so it's very violent sailing, I understand. But Franschhoek, you have to go around the back and then down. Anyway, so Franschhoek, the wines, because of the rain, tend to be a little bit more temperate, a little bit more moderated. Don't have the same dry, arid concentration you expect from things like Swartland. There's some alcohol though. Got some punch. A little bit of drag, bit of traction. Very young. Still got a bit of tannin to it. I think its very, very best days are a long way ahead of itself. This wine probably needs a couple of weeks, actually, or a couple of months really to settle down. But quite delicious. Punchy, intense. And I'm getting that sensation, as I said, of a wine which is grown in deep mineralic soils that are full of minerals, maybe granite. And when you think about the complex soils in the Loire Valley, where Chenin Blanc really started, their wines tend to have this kind of almost teeth-sapping minerality when the wines are young, and that has that here, which is a very good sign for the future. Good stuff. How was that? Yeah, we'll make this 20 minutes in total, I think. So, Durbanville. I love Durbanville because it's so close to the airport. You could theoretically fly to South Africa direct from Heathrow, land in Cape Town. You land about 10 o'clock in the morning, go for some breakfast, check into your hotel, and then get a taxi, get an Uber, drive to Durbanville, go to some superb producer down there. Diemersdal would be my favourite, or Meerendal, another great one. Go down there, sit on a table, have a nice plate of cheese, drink some beautiful Sauvignon, have some nice ham with some delicious, better than Bordeaux lookalikes for £7 or £8 a bottle, and then come back. It's just that close, and it's absolutely fantastic. It would be a bit like going to a vineyard in the Surrey Hills from London. It's that sort of distance. So this is 2017. So we've got 19, 19, 18, 19, 17. 17 was a beautiful vintage. The last truly great and heralded and universally agreed so vintage was 2015, but I think it was more of a monumental success for Pinotage, for Syrah, and for Cabernet than it was for all the whites. There are some beautiful, beautiful white wines made, particularly in the cool climate areas like Elgin. Richard Kershaw, shout out for his Chardonnays. But Chenin Blanc in 2017, if we're keeping this comparison going, had a bit more acidity, a bit more minerality. When they were young, they were super easy to drink, almost like Sauvignon Blanc. But they've kept this dance and this brightness and freshness, as I think the Reds have too. And in my own personal opinion, my own personal preference, I rate 2017 across the board, including for the Reds, better than 15. But we shall see who's right. Quite delicious wine, this. Okay, Durbanville Hills, very big producer in Durbanville. And this wine's called the Collector's Reserve, the Cape Garden, 2017. So I'm expecting the wine to have some oak, otherwise it wouldn't be on the market anymore. So it's probably spent a year in some expensive wood barrels. Beautiful colour, lovely green gold. Oh, what an exquisite nose. That wine smells like... It smells like Burgundy, actually. Smells like... The first smell I got was from a really ripe Merceau, like a 2009 Merceau. I need to find out how much this is. I did have a look and I couldn't find it anywhere. This is a wine which is brought in by Matthew Clark, so it tends to be sold into Grand Restoration. Hilton International buy this for their restaurants, that sort of thing. So you don't often see it, certainly not in multiple retail, but you don't often see it even in private independents. It's for restaurant groups and that sort of thing. And I imagine that it's exceptionally good value for money. Knowing it's Durban Hills and imagining that it's probably less than £20 means this is value for money. What did I say it tasted like? It tasted like a 10-year-old Merceau. Well, there you go. I can't say fairer than that. I'm having that later. Okay, right. Back to Iselle van Blerk. Iselle van Blerk, thank you very much for all the help you've given me. All the tastings whenever I'm there, she does everything. Nothing's too much effort. She makes the most incredible wines. Best red wine, best young red New World wine. Certainly the best red I've ever tasted from South Africa that was that young was Paarl Trebentum, which is a Pinotage Cape blend. And I rate that wine as a perfect wine. That's as close to 100-point wine as I've ever tasted from South Africa. And to think that it's based on Pinotage, a variety that for years I hated, well, I don't anymore. And you'll see that because I'm going to do a Pinotage special when things cool down a bit later on in the summer, ready for Christmas, because it goes all those lovely things like stews and sausages and beef stews, steaks and everything else. So watch this space, but I'm going to give Pinotage a lot of time when I get the chance. But this is her Chenin Blanc, 2018, current release. I think it's only just been released. And she makes small amounts of the most exquisite things. Virtually every variety you can think of, she's made a little bit of somewhere. And they're all good. She's a genius. I really do think that. She's, I don't think she's more than 30. I think it wouldn't even be 30. It may not even be. It's very difficult for me to tell because I'm 50 and I'm old. But just one to watch. KWV, if it says KWV on the label, as much as you can with any brand that I know of in the world, it's okay to buy it. They don't make any bad stuff at all. And I mean that. You might have seen a wine called Ruderberg, which looks quite rustic. They sell it in Sainsbury's. I think it's selling Waitrose still. Utterly delicious. Utterly delicious wine. The Ruderberg 2017 was an absolute pant-wetting bargain. On holiday in Austria, I was buying 2 bottles for £8, so it was £4 a bottle. Don't know how they can do that. Anyway, so well, that's part 1 done. Boy, yeah, that's got concentration. Wowee. All these wines are delicious. Like I said, I'd only pick 3 normally, but I couldn't. I just bloody couldn't. This guy's going to return in the next show. I drank this as well. This is a biodynamic, totally organic wine made by a guy called Johan Reinecker. It was utterly exquisite. Not expensive. I think like around the £12 or £13 mark for this one. But he has a more premium Chenin, which is going to be in the next show. Because I think we need to show how brilliant his wines really are. But there you go. Enjoy. See you next time.